The next few days were a blur of tension and uncertainty for Ethan. He tried to go about his daily routine, cooking meals, cleaning the apartment, applying for jobs, but his mind kept drifting back to Clara. Every noise from her side of the duplex made him jump, and every creak of the shared wall felt like a reminder that he was living next to someone who might not be fully in control of herself. The more he thought about it, the more he realized how little he actually knew about her. Was she really an alien? If so, what kind of alien? And why had she come to Earth in the first place? Ethan's unease grew when he noticed changes in Clara's behavior, or at least what little of it he could observe. She no longer seemed to leave her apartment. He hadn't seen her outside in days, and the lights in her unit stayed on all night. Occasionally, he caught glimpses of movement through the curtains, but they were fleeting and strange, jerky motions that didn't look entirely human. The noises continued, too, louder and more chaotic than ever. Sometimes, he swore he heard her muttering to herself in that same foreign language, her voice rising and falling in frantic bursts. One afternoon, unable to focus on anything else, Ethan decided to do more research. Sitting at his laptop, he searched for anything he could find about aliens and their biology. Most of the information online was speculative or outright absurd, filled with conspiracy theories and blurry photos of UFOs. But buried among the nonsense, he found a scientific article written by a group of astrobiologists. It discussed the concept of mating cycles in certain extraterrestrial species, periods during which their bodies underwent intense hormonal shifts, driving them into states of heightened aggression or vulnerability. According to the article, these cycles could last anywhere from days to weeks, depending on the species. Ethan's stomach tightened as he read. Could this be what Clara was going through? If so, it explained a lot. Her erratic behavior, the warning she'd given him, even the strange noises coming from her apartment. But it also raised new questions. How dangerous could she become during this time? And what exactly did she mean when she said it wasn't safe for him to be near her? That evening, Ethan heard something that made his heart race. It started as a low rumble, almost like thunder, but it quickly escalated into a series of loud crashes. He rushed to the shared wall, pressing his ear against it. The sounds were unmistakable, furniture being overturned, glass shattering, and what sounded like growls, deep and guttural. For a moment, he considered calling the police, but what would he tell them? That his alien neighbor was losing control because of some cosmic biological urge. They'd think he was crazy. Instead, Ethan grabbed a flashlight and went outside. He circled around to Clara's unit, his hands trembling as he approached the window. Peering through a gap in the curtains, he saw chaos. The room was a mess. Chairs tipped over, books scattered across the floor, and claw marks gouged into the walls. In the center of it all was Clara, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. Her glowing eyes darted around wildly, and her movements were jerky and unpredictable. She looked like she was fighting against something invisible, struggling to keep herself under control. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just a phase or a mood swing. It was something primal, something beyond reason. He wanted to call out to her, to ask if there was anything he could do to help, but fear held him back. What if she turned on him? What if she attacked without meaning to? As he stood there, frozen in place, Clara suddenly stopped moving. Her head snapped toward the window. And for a moment, their eyes met. Ethan felt a surge of panic as she lunged forward, her hands slamming against the glass. He stumbled backward, nearly dropping the flashlight, and scrambled back to his own apartment. Once inside, Ethan locked the door and leaned against it, breathing heavily. His mind raced with possibilities. Whatever was happening to Clara, it was getting worse. And if he didn't figure out a way to help her soon, things could spiral completely out of control. But how could he intervene without putting himself in danger? The answer eluded him, leaving him trapped between fear and responsibility. Ethan Carter had always believed that starting over was supposed to feel freeing. After months of living out of a duffel bag, crashing on couches, and eating microwave meals in friends' cramped apartments, he finally found a place to call his own. It wasn't much, a modest duplex on the edge of a quiet suburban neighborhood. But it was affordable, and more importantly, it was his. The landlord, a chatty older woman named Mrs. Peterson, assured him it was a great spot for someone looking to reset. She mentioned something about a neighbor on the other side of the shared wall, but brushed it off with a vague comment about how she keeps to herself. Ethan didn't care. All he wanted was peace and quiet. The day he moved in, the sky was overcast, and a light drizzle made loading boxes into the small house a chore. Ethan cursed under his breath as he slipped on a wet patch of grass while carrying a particularly heavy box. He set it down inside the doorway and took a moment to catch his breath. The interior of the duplex wasn't anything special. Peeling wallpaper in the kitchen, scuffed hardwood floors, and a faint smell of mildew. But it felt like home already, or at least it would once he unpacked. As he worked through the evening, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. At first, he thought it was just the exhaustion talking. Moving was hard work, and he hadn't slept well in days. But then he started hearing it, a low hum coming from the other side of the wall. It wasn't loud, not enough to be truly annoying, but it was persistent, like the sound of machinery running in the background, or maybe an air conditioner struggling to keep up. He paused mid-unpack, listening closely. The noise seemed to pulse, almost rhythmically, before fading into silence. Probably just the neighbor, Ethan muttered to himself, shaking his head. Maybe it got some weird music playing. He tried to ignore it and went back to organizing his belongings. By the time midnight rolled around, he was too tired to care about strange sounds anymore. Collapsing onto his mattress, still bare without fitted sheets, Ethan closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep. But the hum returned later that night, louder this time. It woke him up around 2 a.m., accompanied by what sounded like soft clicking noises. Ethan groaned, rolling over and pulling a pillow over his head. "Great," he mumbled. "Guess I've got a noisy neighbor." The next morning, after a restless night's sleep, Ethan decided to investigate. He knocked on the door of the adjoining unit, hoping to introduce himself and maybe ask if they could turn down whatever was making all the racket. No one answered. Frowning, he knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. Just as he was about to give up, he heard movement from inside, a shuffle of feet, followed by a voice speaking in a language he didn't recognize. It was melodic but sharp, punctuated by strange inflections that sent a shiver down his spine. "Hello," Ethan called out hesitantly. "Is anyone there?" The voice stopped abruptly, replaced by silence, so complete it felt unnatural. For a moment, Ethan wondered if he imagined the whole thing. Shaking his head, he turned back toward his side of the duplex. Maybe the neighbor was shy, or busy, or simply didn't want visitors. Whatever the case, he figured it wasn't worth dwelling on. After all, he had plenty of other things to worry about, like finding a job, fixing the leaky faucet in his bathroom, and figuring out where to buy groceries nearby. Still, as he closed his door behind him, Ethan couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something unusual was happening next door, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. Over the next few days, Ethan tried to settle into a routine. He spent his mornings applying for jobs online, and his afternoons cleaning up the duplex. The place was slowly starting to feel like home, though the strange noises from next door kept interrupting his peace. At first, they were faint, just enough to make him glance at the shared wall and wonder what was going on. But as the days passed, the sounds grew louder and more frequent. There were low growls that seemed to echo through the walls, metallic clicks that reminded him of gears grinding together, and occasional thuds, like something heavy was being dragged across the floor. Ethan told himself it was probably nothing serious. Maybe his neighbor had pets or was working on some kind of project. Still, curiosity got the better of him. One evening, while taking out the trash, he decided to take another shot at meeting them. As he walked around to the front of the adjoining unit, he noticed the curtains twitch slightly, as if someone was watching him from inside. He hesitated for a moment before knocking on the door. This time, someone answered. The woman who opened the door looked different. Her skin shimmered faintly under the porch light, almost like it was covered in a thin layer of glitter. Her eyes glowed softly, a pale greenish hue that made Ethan blink in surprise. She smiled politely, though there was something guarded about her expression. "Hello," she said, her voice smooth but with an odd cadence, as if she were carefully choosing each word. "I'm Clara." "Oh, hi," Ethan replied, feeling suddenly awkward. "I'm Ethan. I live next door." "Yes, I know," Clara said, tilting her head slightly. "You moved in recently." "Yeah, that's right." Ethan cleared his throat, unsure of what else to say. "I just wanted to introduce myself, and I've been hearing some noises lately. Not that I'm complaining or anything, but I was wondering if everything's okay over here." Clara's smile faltered for a split second, and her glowing eyes flickered. "Everything is fine," she said quickly, almost too quickly. "Just adjustments. This planet has many unique qualities." Ethan nodded, though he didn't fully understand what she meant. "Okay, well, if you ever need anything, feel free to knock. Or, call me or whatever." "Thank you," Clara said, stepping back toward the doorway. "I appreciate your kindness." Before Ethan could respond, she closed the door gently, leaving him standing there with more questions than answers. As he walked back to his side of the duplex, he couldn't help but replay their brief conversation in his mind. Something about Clara felt off. It wasn't just her appearance, though that was certainly unusual. It was the way she spoke, the way she moved, like she was trying very hard to act normal but wasn't quite succeeding. That night, the noises started again, louder than ever. Ethan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as the growls and clicks echoed through the walls. He tried to ignore them, telling himself it was none of his business. But sleep eluded him. Every creak and thud made him tense, his imagination running wild with possibilities. Was Clara really just adjusting to life on Earth, or was there something more going on? The next morning, Ethan woke up groggy and irritable. He poured himself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, watching the street outside. Everything seemed so ordinary. The mailman making his rounds, kids riding bikes, cars driving past. It was hard to reconcile that normalcy with the bizarre encounter he'd had the night before. As the day went on, Ethan found himself thinking about Clara more and more. He wanted to believe she was harmless, just a quirky neighbor with unusual habits. But deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she wasn't telling him. Something important. Later that afternoon, he decided to do a little research. Sitting at his laptop, he typed "Alien Visitors Earth" into the search bar, half expecting to find nothing useful. To his surprise, he stumbled across forums and articles discussing extraterrestrial encounters. Some of the stories sounded far-fetched, but others mentioned glowing eyes, shimmering skin, and strange behaviors during certain times of the year. Mating season, one post claimed. Aliens in mating season could become unpredictable, even dangerous. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his heart pounding. Could that be what was happening with Clara? Was she going through some kind of biological change that explained the noises and her odd demeanor? The idea seemed ridiculous, yet it also made a strange sort of sense. If he was right, then Clara might not even realize how much trouble she was causing, or how close she was to losing control. For the rest of the day, Ethan debated what to do. Should he confront her, call the authorities, or just stay out of it entirely? Each option came with risks, and he wasn't sure. As the days went by, Ethan found it harder and harder to ignore the strange happenings next door. The noises from Clara's side of the duplex weren't just louder. They were more erratic, almost frantic. There were moments of eerie silence, followed by sudden bursts of activity, thuds, scrapes, and what sounded like furniture being thrown against the walls. It was as if something inside her apartment was alive and restless, pacing back and forth in a frenzy. Ethan tried to focus on his own life, but it was impossible not to be affected. He caught himself glancing at the shared wall whenever he heard a loud crash or an unfamiliar growl. Sometimes, late at night, he would sit in his living room with the lights off, staring at the thin line where the two units met, half expecting something, or someone, to break through. His mind kept wandering back to the things he'd read online about alien mating seasons. The posts had been vague, but one detail stuck with him. During this time, some species became highly volatile, their instincts overriding logic and self-control. One evening, while making dinner, Ethan heard a sound that made his blood run cold. It wasn't the usual metallic clicks or low growls. It was a voice. Clara's voice, speaking rapidly in that same melodic yet foreign language she used when they first met. But this time, her tone was different. It was sharp, panicked, almost desperate. Ethan turned off the stove and stood still, straining to hear more. The words were incomprehensible, but the emotion behind them was clear. She was afraid. He told himself to stay out of it. Whatever was happening, it wasn't his problem. But curiosity, and maybe a little guilt, got the better of him. Grabbing his phone, he texted Clara a simple message. "Are you okay?" He didn't expect a reply, but a few minutes later, his phone buzzed. The response was short and cryptic. "Stay away." The message sent a chill down Ethan's spine. Stay away. What did that mean? Was she warning him about something dangerous, or was she trying to protect him from herself? Either way, it only deepened the mystery. Ethan spent the rest of the night pacing his apartment, unable to concentrate on anything else. Sleep was out of the question. The next morning, Ethan decided to take matters into his own hands. He couldn't just sit around waiting for something bad to happen. If Clara really was in trouble, or if she posed a threat, he needed to know. After grabbing a cup of coffee, he mustered up the courage to knock on her door again. This time, there was no hesitation. He knocked firmly, calling out her name. "Clara, it's Ethan. Can we talk?" For a long moment, there was no response. Just as he was about to give up, the door creaked open slightly. Clara stood there, her shimmering skin paler than before, her glowing eyes dimmed but still unsettling. She looked exhausted, her shoulders slumped and her movements sluggish. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice strained. "I'm worried about you," Ethan said honestly. "You've been acting different. And the noises, I can hear them through the wall. Is everything okay?" Clara hesitated, her gaze flickering toward the ground. "I told you to stay away," she said quietly. "This is not safe for you." "Not safe? What does that even mean?" Ethan pressed, taking a step closer. "If there's something wrong, I can help. You don't have to go through this alone." Her reaction startled him. In an instant, her composure crumbled. Her glowing eyes flared brighter, and she grabbed his arm with surprising strength. Ethan winced, feeling her fingers dig into his skin. "You don't understand," she hissed, her voice trembling with urgency. "You need to leave me alone. Don't come near me. Please." Before Ethan could respond, Clara released him and slammed the door shut. Stunned, he stood there for a moment, rubbing his sore arm. Her warning replayed in his mind, each word heavy with unspoken danger. Whatever was happening to her, it was serious. And judging by the fear in her eyes, it wasn't just affecting her, it was putting everyone around her at risk. That night, Ethan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He replayed their encounter over and over, trying to make sense of it. Clara's behavior was becoming increasingly alarming, and the noises from her apartment showed no sign of stopping. Something primal seemed to be taking over, something beyond her control. Ethan knew he should listen to her warning and keep his distance, but how could he, when every instinct told him she needed help? By the time dawn broke, Ethan had made up his mind. Whether it was brave or foolish, he didn't know. All he knew was that he couldn't ignore the situation any longer. If Clara truly was in danger, He had to find a way to intervene, even if it meant risking his own safety. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant sound from Clara's side of the duplex, kept him wide awake. His mind was a whirlwind of fear and frustration. He knew he couldn't just sit there and do nothing, but what could he possibly do? Clara had made it clear that she didn't want him near her, yet her behavior suggested she might not be able to handle whatever was happening on her own. The noises grew louder as the hours dragged on. Crashes, growls, and what sounded like desperate cries for help. Finally, around 2 a.m., Ethan heard something that made his blood run cold. A loud thud shook the shared wall, followed by the unmistakable sound of breaking glass. This wasn't just furniture being knocked over anymore. This was destruction. His heart pounded as he grabbed the spare key Clara had given him weeks earlier during their brief introduction. She'd said it was just in case, though neither of them could have imagined it would lead to this moment. Ethan hesitated at his door, clutching the flashlight in one hand and the key in the other. He told himself this was a bad idea, that walking into Clara's apartment in the middle of the night was reckless and dangerous. But the thought of doing nothing felt worse. Taking a deep breath, he stepped outside and crept toward her unit. The door creaked as he unlocked it, and Ethan winced, expecting Clara to burst out at any second. Instead, silence greeted him. The air inside was thick and charged, almost electric, and the scent of scorched metal filled his nostrils. The living room was a disaster zone. Furniture overturned, walls scratched, and shards of glass scattered across the floor. In the dim light from his flashlight, Ethan spotted Clara hunched in the corner, her body trembling violently. Her appearance shocked him. Her shimmering skin now pulsed with an eerie glow, and her glowing eyes were wild, darting around the room as if searching for an escape. Her hands flexed and unflexed, her fingers elongating slightly, tipped with sharp points that hadn't been there before. She let out a low growl, her head snapping toward him as he entered. For a moment, Ethan froze, unsure whether to retreat or press forward. "Clara," he said softly, keeping his voice calm despite the fear coursing through him. "It's me, Ethan. I'm here to help." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she bared her teeth, sharp and jagged, and let out a guttural snarl. Ethan took a cautious step back, raising his hands to show he wasn't a threat. "I know you're scared," he continued, his voice steady even as his knees threatened to buckle. "But you don't have to go through this alone. Let me help you." Clara's body tensed, and she lunged forward suddenly, faster than Ethan thought possible. He stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a pile of debris, but managed to dodge her grasp. Her movements were erratic, driven by instincts he couldn't comprehend. She slammed against the wall, leaving deep gouges where her claws scraped the surface. Ethan realized then that reasoning with her wasn't going to work. She wasn't fully aware of who he was or what she was doing. Desperation took over. Ethan remembered reading online about restraining aliens during intense biological episodes. It was risky, but he didn't see another option. Grabbing a length of rope he kept in his toolbox for emergencies, he approached her slowly, speaking in a soothing tone. "Clara, I'm sorry. I don't want to hurt you, but I can't let you hurt yourself either." She roared, thrashing wildly as he closed the distance between them. With every ounce of strength he had, Ethan managed to grab her wrists and pin them behind her back. Clara fought fiercely, her strength far exceeding anything human. She bucked and twisted, nearly throwing him off balance, but Ethan held on, wrapping the rope tightly around her arms. Tears streamed down her face as she struggled, her glowing eyes locked onto his with a mixture of rage and despair. When she finally stopped fighting, collapsing onto the floor in exhaustion, Ethan slumped beside her, his chest heaving. He tied her legs as gently as he could, ensuring the knots were secure but not too tight. As he worked, he whispered reassurances, hoping some part of her understood. "I'm sorry," he repeated. "I'm so sorry." Clara's breathing slowed, her body going limp. Ethan sat there in the wreckage of her apartment, his mind racing. What had he just done? Had he saved her, or made things worse? All he knew was that they weren't out of danger yet. Whatever came next, he would have to face it together with her. Ethan sat on the floor of Clara's apartment, his body aching from the struggle. The room was eerily quiet now, save for the sound of Clara's labored breathing. She lay still, her glowing eyes dimmed, but still flickering faintly. Ethan wasn't sure if she had passed out, or was simply too exhausted to move. Either way, he knew this wasn't over. Tying her up had been a desperate measure, but it felt like only a temporary solution. He needed answers, and fast. He glanced around the chaotic space, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The claw marks on the walls, the shattered glass, and the strange, scorched patches on the floor hinted at something far beyond human understanding. Clara's transformation, or whatever it was, had left its mark everywhere. Her shimmering skin no longer pulsed with light, but her body still radiated a faint warmth, almost like she was generating energy. Ethan couldn't help but wonder how much longer she could endure this state before it consumed her completely. As he sat there, his mind raced through possibilities. Should he call for help? But who would he even call? The police wouldn't know what to do with an alien in distress, and explaining the situation would likely get him locked up instead. His gaze fell on Clara again. Despite everything, she didn't look evil or malicious, just scared and overwhelmed. Whatever was happening to her, it wasn't entirely her fault. That thought gave him a small measure of resolve. If no one else could help, then it was up to him. Suddenly, a low hum filled the air, vibrating through the walls and floor. Ethan froze, his heart skipping a beat. At first, he thought it was coming from Clara, but then he realized the sound was external, something outside. He scrambled to his feet and rushed to the window, peering through the torn curtains. What he saw made his jaw drop. A sleek, silver spaceship hovered silently above the duplex, its surface gleaming under the moonlight. It was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen, smooth and seamless, with no visible windows or doors. The hum grew louder as the ship descended slowly, casting a pale glow over the neighborhood. For a moment, Ethan wondered if anyone else would notice, but the streets remained empty, the houses dark and quiet. It was as if the world had momentarily paused, leaving him alone to witness the impossible. Two figures emerged from the ship, stepping onto the ground with graceful ease. They were tall and slender, their bodies covered in shimmering suits that reflected the light. Their features were humanoid but distinctly alien, with elongated limbs and softly glowing eyes similar to Clara's. As they approached the duplex, Ethan instinctively stepped back, unsure whether to feel relieved or terrified. One of the figures raised a hand in a gesture of peace. "We mean no harm," they said in a voice that resonated like music. "We are here for our kin." Ethan swallowed hard, pointing toward Clara. "She's inside," he managed to say, his voice trembling. "I think she's hurt, or sick. I don't know what's wrong with her." The two aliens exchanged a glance before nodding. Without hesitation, they moved past Ethan and entered Clara's apartment. They knelt beside her, inspecting the ropes binding her limbs. One of them placed a glowing device against her forehead, and within seconds, the knots loosened and fell away. Clara stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. "She is unwell," one of the aliens said, turning to Ethan. "This is her mating season, a time of great strain for our kind. We have been searching for her since she went missing." Ethan blinked, processing their words. "You're saying all this, the noises, the destruction, it's because of her biology?" "Yes," the alien replied, "but she should not have been alone. Our species requires care during these cycles. Left unchecked, the urges can overwhelm us." Guilt washed over Ethan. He hadn't known any of this when he tied her up, but he couldn't deny that his actions might have saved her, and possibly himself, from worse outcomes. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd intruded where he didn't belong. Clara let out a soft groan, her body relaxing as the aliens worked to stabilize her. One of them turned to Ethan, their glowing eyes meeting his. "You have done well," they said. Few humans would show such courage in the face of the unknown. Ethan nodded, though he didn't feel particularly brave. All he'd wanted was to survive the night. Now, standing amidst the wreckage of Clara's apartment with alien visitors preparing to take her away, he realized just how far outside his comfort zone this experience had pushed him. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: life would never be the same again. The aliens worked quickly and efficiently, their movements fluid and precise. They placed a small glowing device on Clara's chest, and within moments, her breathing steadied. The faint glow in her skin returned, though it was softer now, less intense. Ethan watched from a distance, unsure of what to say or do. He felt like an outsider looking in, witnessing something both fascinating and deeply personal. One of the aliens turned to him, their glowing eyes steady but kind. "You acted wisely," they said. Restraint was necessary to prevent harm, to her and to others. Ethan nodded slowly, still processing everything. "I didn't know what else to do," he admitted. "She warned me to stay away, but I couldn't just ignore it, not when things were getting worse." The alien tilted their head slightly, as if considering his words. "Your instincts served you well. Few humans would risk themselves for someone so different. We are grateful." Before Ethan could respond, the second alien gently lifted Clara into their arms. She didn't resist, her body limp and unresponsive, though her eyes flickered weakly as if trying to focus. The sight tugged at Ethan's heart. Despite everything, he realized he felt a strange connection to her, a mix of concern, curiosity, and even admiration for her struggle. "Will she be okay?" Ethan asked hesitantly. "She will recover," the first alien replied. "Our ship has the tools needed to guide her through this cycle safely. She will not remember much of what happened here, but we will ensure she understands that you meant no harm." Ethan nodded again, though part of him wondered if forgetting was truly better. Would she remember how hard she'd fought, how much she'd endured, and would she ever know the lengths he'd gone to in order to help her? The aliens moved toward the door, carrying Clara with care. Ethan followed them outside, watching as they approached the hovering spaceship. Its surface shimmered faintly under the moonlight, almost alive in its perfection. The hum grew louder as the ship's hatch opened, revealing a soft, golden light within. The alien stepped inside, disappearing with Clara into the vessel. For a moment, Ethan stood there, staring at the ship. It was surreal, like something out of a movie or a dream. He half expected it to vanish in a flash of light, leaving him alone with nothing but questions. But instead, one of the aliens reappeared at the entrance, addressing him once more. "You have earned our trust," they said. "If you ever need assistance or answers, you may call upon us. We do not forget those who show kindness." Ethan blinked, taken aback by the offer. How would I do that?" The alien extended a slender hand, holding out a small crystalline object. It pulsed gently with light, warm to the touch. "This is a beacon. Activate it in times of need, and we will come." He accepted the object cautiously, feeling its weight in his palm. It was beautiful, delicate yet powerful, and he knew instinctively that it wasn't something to be taken lightly. "Thank you," he said quietly. "And take care of her." "We will," the alien assured him. With that, they stepped back into the ship, and the hatch closed behind them. The hum intensified, and the vessel rose silently into the air, disappearing into the night sky. Ethan stood in the driveway long after the ship was gone, clutching the crystal in his hand. His mind raced with thoughts and emotions he couldn't quite untangle. Relief, fear, wonder, they all swirled together, leaving him dizzy. He glanced back at the duplex, now eerily quiet without the chaos of the past few days. The broken glass, overturned furniture, and claw marks were reminders of what had happened, but they also felt distant, like pieces of a story he'd stumbled into rather than lived. Eventually, Ethan went back inside, locking the door behind him. He set the crystal on the kitchen counter, where its soft glow illuminated the room. For the first time in days, he felt a sense of calm, not because everything made sense, but because the immediate danger had passed. Still, he knew this experience would stay with him forever. It had changed him, opening his eyes to possibilities he'd never imagined. As he sat down at the table, exhausted but unable to sleep, Ethan realized something important. Life was full of mysteries, some of which defied explanation. But sometimes, bravery wasn't about having all the answers. It was about stepping forward, even when you didn't know what lay ahead. And tonight, despite the fear and uncertainty, he'd done just that. In the days that followed, Ethan found himself replaying the events over and over in his mind. The spaceship, the glowing crystal, Clara's desperate struggle. It all felt like a dream he couldn't quite shake. But every time he looked at the crystal sitting on his kitchen counter, its faint pulse of light reminded him it was real. Life had returned to normal, or at least as normal as it could be after an encounter with aliens, but the experience lingered in his thoughts, shaping the way he saw the world. He started small, researching more about extraterrestrial life and the possibility of other beings visiting Earth. At first, he stuck to credible sources: documentaries, scientific articles, and interviews with experts in astrobiology. But soon, curiosity led him down rabbit holes he hadn't expected. He joined online forums where people shared stories of strange encounters, some believable, others far-fetched. What surprised him most was how many accounts echoed what he'd gone through. Mysterious neighbors, unexplainable noises, and fleeting glimpses of something beyond human understanding. One evening, while scrolling through a forum thread, Ethan came across a post that caught his attention. A user claimed to have met someone like Clara, a being who shimmered with light and spoke in melodic tones. According to the post, these individuals were part of a species known for their peaceful nature, but also for the challenges they faced during certain biological cycles. The description matched Clara almost perfectly, right down to the glowing eyes and the erratic behavior during mating season. Ethan hesitated before replying. Did anyone mention how to help them if they're in trouble? He typed cautiously, careful not to reveal too much about his own experience. Within minutes, responses poured in. Some users suggested contacting intergalactic authorities, though no one seemed to know how to reach them. Others recommended creating safe spaces for the affected individuals, free from stress or external stimuli. One response stood out: if you ever meet one, just stay calm and listen. They might not act like us, but they're still trying to communicate. The advice resonated with Ethan. Looking back, he realized he'd done exactly that, stayed calm, and listened, even when fear threatened to overwhelm him. It wasn't much, but it had made a difference. For the first time since the incident, he felt a flicker of pride. He hadn't solved everything, but he'd done his best under impossible circumstances. As weeks passed, Ethan began to notice subtle changes in himself. He paid closer attention to the world around him, noticing details he'd once overlooked: the hum of electricity in the air, the patterns of light on his walls, the quiet rhythm of his neighborhood at night. Everything seemed richer, fuller, as if the ordinary carried hints of the extraordinary. He wondered if this was what it meant to truly see, to look beyond the surface and embrace the unknown. Then, one morning, Ethan received something unexpected: a letter. It arrived in a plain envelope with no return address, slipped under his door while he was out running errands. Inside was a single sheet of paper, written in elegant flowing script. The message was short but heartfelt. "Thank you for saving me when I could not save myself. Your courage will not be forgotten." There was no signature, but Ethan didn't need one. He knew it was from Clara, or rather, the version of her who remembered what had happened. The note brought a mix of emotions: relief, gratitude, and a touch of sadness. He wished he could have spoken to her again, asked her questions, maybe even thanked her for teaching him so much without meaning to. But he understood why she couldn't stay. Her world was different from his, filled with rules and realities he might never fully comprehend. That evening, Ethan placed the letter beside the crystal on his counter. Together, they served as reminders of the bizarre yet profound connection he'd formed with someone not of this world. Life moved forward, as it always did, but Ethan knew he'd carry those memories with him forever. For the first time in years, he felt hopeful, not because he had all the answers, but because he'd learned to live with the questions. And deep down, he knew that if another mystery ever came knocking, he wouldn't hesitate to open the door. Ethan's days slipped into a new rhythm, one tinged with both routine and wonder. He went back to job hunting, cleaning the duplex, and trying to piece together a stable life. But the ordinary moments now felt layered with meaning, as if the world had revealed a hidden dimension he couldn't unsee. The letter from Clara sat framed on his mantel, alongside the glowing crystal, both serving as quiet reminders of how much had changed in such a short time. He found himself thinking about Clara often, not in a romantic way, but with a sense of gratitude. She had shown him that courage wasn't about being fearless, it was about acting despite fear. Her struggle had forced him to confront his own limits, to step outside the comfort zone he built around himself after his messy breakup. In a strange way, she had helped him grow, even if their paths would never cross again. One afternoon, while walking through the neighborhood, Ethan noticed something unusual, a faint shimmer in the air near the edge of the park. At first, he thought it was just heat waves rising off the pavement, but as he approached, the shimmer grew more defined. It reminded him of Clara's skin, that otherworldly glow that seemed to defy logic. His heart raced as he slowed his pace, unsure whether to investigate further or turn back. Before he could decide, a figure emerged from the shimmer. It wasn't Clara, but it was unmistakably alien. Tall and slender, with glowing eyes and smooth, reflective skin, the being regarded Ethan calmly. "You are the human who aided our kin," they said, their voice resonant and melodic. Ethan nodded, his throat dry. I tried to help her. Is she okay?" "She is well," the alien replied. "Her cycle has passed, and she is recovering under our care. We wish to thank you personally for your actions." Relief washed over Ethan, though he still felt awkward accepting praise for something he'd done out of instinct. "I didn't know what else to do," he admitted. She needed help. The alien tilted their head slightly, studying him. Few humans would show such compassion for someone so different. "Your actions have strengthened the bond between our species." Ethan wasn't sure what that meant exactly, but he felt a flicker of pride. "I'm glad I could help," he said simply. The alien extended a hand, holding out a small object. Another crystal, similar to the one he already owned but slightly larger. "This is a gift," they explained, "a token of gratitude from our people. Should you ever require aid, activate it, and we will come." Ethan accepted the crystal carefully, feeling its warmth against his palm. "Thank you," he said, "but why give me this? I'm just a regular person." "You are more than that," the alien responded. "You have proven yourself capable of understanding and kindness, qualities that transcend worlds. Remember this, not all mysteries are meant to be feared. Some are opportunities to learn." With those words, the alien stepped back into the shimmer, which faded as quickly as it had appeared. Ethan stood there for a moment, clutching the new crystal, before heading home. That evening, he placed the second crystal beside the first, marveling at how their lights seemed to pulse in harmony. He realized then that his life would never be the same. The experience had opened his eyes to possibilities beyond his wildest imagination, and while he didn't fully understand everything, he no longer felt afraid of the unknown. Instead, he felt curious and ready to embrace whatever came next, whether it was another encounter with extraterrestrial beings or simply the challenges of everyday life. For the first time in years, Ethan felt truly alive, connected to something greater than himself. And deep down, He knew that if the universe called on him again, he wouldn't hesitate to answer. Life in the duplex returned to a quiet rhythm, but Ethan carried the weight of his experiences with him every day. The crystals on his mantle became a part of his daily routine. He'd glance at them while making coffee, their soft glow a comforting reminder that he wasn't alone in the universe. Though the aliens hadn't returned and Clara's letter remained his only direct connection to her, Ethan felt a strange sense of peace. He had faced something extraordinary and come out stronger for it. Over time, Ethan began sharing bits of his story with others. Not the whole truth, of course, but enough to spark curiosity. At first, he told himself it was just harmless storytelling, a way to entertain friends or lighten awkward moments at social gatherings. But as he spoke, he realized how much he'd grown. Each retelling helped him process what had happened, turning fear into fascination and confusion into clarity. One evening, while chatting with an old coworker over drinks, Ethan mentioned the glowing crystal on his mantle. "It's like a reminder," he said, smiling faintly. "Sometimes life throws you curveballs you can't explain. You just have to roll with it." His coworker laughed, brushing it off as one of Ethan's quirky habits. But later that night, as Ethan walked home under the stars, he found himself reflecting on the conversation. Maybe sharing his story wasn't just about processing his own emotions. It was about inspiring others to embrace the unknown. Not everyone would encounter aliens, but everyone faced mysteries in their own lives. Fear could hold people back, but courage opened doors they never knew existed. As weeks turned into months, Ethan noticed subtle changes in his outlook. He started taking risks he'd once avoided, applying for jobs he didn't think he was qualified for, reaching out to old friends he'd lost touch with, even volunteering at community events. Each step pushed him further out of his comfort zone, reminding him of the night he'd decided to help Clara despite the danger. Courage, he realized, wasn't a one-time thing. It was a habit, something you practiced until it became second nature. Then, one crisp autumn morning, Ethan woke up to find the crystals glowing brighter than usual. Their light pulsed steadily, almost like they were trying to get his attention. Heart pounding, he picked up the smaller crystal, the one Clara's kin had given him, and held it in his hand. A warm sensation spread through his fingers, and before he could question what was happening, the shimmering portal appeared in his living room. Two familiar figures stepped through, their glowing eyes meeting his. "We have come to honor our promise," one of them said. "You called, and we are here." Ethan blinked, confused. "I didn't call," he stammered. "At least, not on purpose." The alien tilted their head slightly. "The bond between us is strong. Your thoughts reached us, though you may not have intended them to." Realization dawned on Ethan. Lately, he'd been wondering what lay beyond Earth, dreaming of distant stars and uncharted worlds. Had his curiosity summoned them, or was this simply the next chapter in a journey he'd unknowingly begun? "We offer you a choice," the second alien said. "Come with us and see the wonders of the cosmos, or remain here and continue your path among your own kind." Ethan hesitated, his mind racing. The idea of leaving everything behind was terrifying, but so was staying, knowing there was so much more to explore. Finally, he took a deep breath and nodded. "I'll go," he said, surprising even himself. "But will I ever come back?" The aliens exchanged a glance before answering. "The universe is vast, and paths often cross again. Trust in yourself, and you will find your way." With that, Ethan stepped through the shimmering portal, leaving the duplex and Earth behind. As the world dissolved into light, he felt a surge of excitement and hope. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready. After all, life's greatest adventures often began with a single brave step into the unknown.